When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. Death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you all very much.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the WiBit.net podcast. This podcast is not a normal podcast. The first topic that we're going to talk about is what's the obvious topic that's going on right now, and that is the loss of the legendary Steve Jobs, former CEO and co-founder of Apple Computers. So, good evening, guys. I have Jason on the line. What's up, Jason?
Howdy.
And my buddy Brian.
Hey there.
So, guys, we lost Steve Jobs yesterday.
I mean, for me personally, I think the podcast and the site, my posts on the site are a good indication that I'm not the biggest Apple fanboy out there. If anything, I would never admit to this again, but I'm a bit more of a Linux and Android fanboy than anything. And, I don't really have a lot to compare this to. I imagine that this is what people felt like when John Lennon died, but it got a little dusty for me at times. It got a little choked up. You got to pay credit where it's due, and the guy was. He changed everything. We don't see too many people like that in life, and we're all a little less cool now that he's dead.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it's less frequent than once a generation, but every so often there is a person on this planet that has an idea that's able to take it through. And before the whole PC revolution, the world was different. Jobs came along, revolutionized it, and basically everything that we have, we can attribute, at least in part, to the efforts of Jobs and his guys back in the day.
And what's amazing is the number of things that he contributed to.
Yeah.
Like he was absolutely a living legend, Mm-hmm. Even the idea of having the ability to choose fonts on a personal computer was something that he introduced. Those original fonts that he built, he actually did after taking a calligraphy class, like the Mac fonts, Chicago, London, Los Angeles. Those were all fonts that he drew and incorporated so that people could choose fonts on the user computer. But that was kind of a revolutionary step in that direction, when it wasn't just everybody has to express themselves exactly the same way. A computer can also show the personality of the individual as well, and that was a huge leap forward. Mm-hmm. Just in itself, let alone everything else.
Well, I mean, he kind of brought the whole graphical interface into the modern era.
Him and Wozniak.
Mouses, the mice, they weren't what I don't think they even existed really.
I remember on the Apple IIe we used to have when I was a kid. It was before the mouse, but we had the paddle. I don't know if you guys remember these. But
I don't remember the paddle.
So you hold it in your hand, and there's a button on one side, and there's like a dial knob on the top.
Huh.
So
it's like a Wiimote.
But there's two of them. So you turn the two knobs kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch to get the position of your cursor, and then you click the buttons to click.
So it's like he invented the Wiimote then.
Basically, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Check off another. He's like Edison now.
Exactly. There you go. He's like Tesla.
Yeah. The interesting story about the graphical interface was that was a Xerox product that they were able to kind of I say swindle, but it really wasn't swindling because
they were going to trash it.
Xerox had absolutely no interest in the project, and they were able to get the rights to the software that ran the mouse mouse and the mouse technology and incorporate that into home computing. And I mean, I know we take for granted nowadays you have a mouse and a keyboard and all that kind of stuff, but at the time that was coming to be, graphical interfaces and input devices like mice and that kind of thing, they didn't exist in mass market. That was a big step.
Oh yeah, and all the way through up until even not that recently, where we take for granted the idea that we have some device that we can listen to music on that's not a CD player.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the whole Xerox thing, that's one of the companies that Xerox could have owned the whole shebang. They kind of came up with everything first and didn't do anything with it. And then a lot of those guys moved on. And, it's one thing, I guess, to come up with the idea. And it's funny, you said a second ago, Kevin, that kind of reminded me of an Onion story from today. The headline, and we're going to have to bleep this out. The headline is "Last American Who Knew What the he was doing dies." And the whole quote in there is that, the last person in America who could sit down, come up with an idea, and then execute on the idea has died. So, I mean, Xerox came up with the ideas. He's the one who executed it. He had a vision, and he wasn't going to take no for an answer. And he that's what changes things. I mean, everybody comes up with ideas all the time. It's making it happen is what the difference is.
Yeah, and being able to execute them. I think one of the things that's really funny is, I don't know if you guys ever read those, like every now and again, he'll respond to somebody's email that emails Apple.
Yeah.
And most of his emails that he responds back is like, yep, no, no.
Yeah.
It will be, like it's just very direct. That's what it takes. Oftentimes you find in business, the absolute majority of times, you run into people in business and is it this or is it that? Well, let's have a meeting about that because you could kind of consider it a couple different ways. Like you don't get anything done that way. You absolutely need somebody who can, it's like in military, you need a general who can make decisions quickly and be right almost all the time. And that's an extremely rare personality.
Yeah, I think my two favorite stories are in no particular order, but when Woz built the home PC for the Homebrew Computer Club, he was under contract at that time with Hewlett-Packard. He had to, by contract, take the technology to Hewlett-Packard before him and Jobs could sell it. And when Woz took the computer to Hewlett-Packard, they were just in awe that why would a person want to have a computer in their house? And I think that's so funny because, like, you think of Hewlett-Packard, I mean, they were a big powerhouse up until recently, and they just did not have that forward thinking. And the other story that I really like is you guys remember the whole Captain Crunch thing?
Yeah, the hacker stuff.
Yeah, like back when Freaking was the thing, like Captain Crunch, I forget the guy's real name, but, he was some infamous underground freaker, and he was showing Jobs and Woz how to hack the phone system, and it was Steve Jobs' idea to challenge him to call the Pope. So they actually called and got the Pope, and then they called the White House. And according to what's his name, the Captain Crunch, they actually spoke to Richard Nixon. Isn't that hysterical?
That's hysterical. That's awesome.
Those are stories about Jobs that will always they're just hysterical. They're awesome. It just adds to the legend, I guess.
Well, and even like the gladiator-like story of him coming back and turning the company back around.
Oh my God, absolutely.
I mean, like that itself is like something. It's like something that only Russell Crowe does in movies.
I know.
There's not a lot of autobiographies or biographies in general that I like to read, but the two that I've read before is Johnny Cash's autobiography, Bob Dylan's, and I'm going to read Steve Jobs when it comes out because I think the man's whole story is just, even the hippie days out in India where he was just tripping on acid all the time, all the way up through. I mean, the guy's life is, like he says in his Stanford thing, he's just, in retrospect, you connect the dots, and I don't think there's any story that seems to connect the dots better than his does.
Well, and another very interesting thing that he did was, remember the Think Different campaign?
Mm-hmm.
The Think Different was a phrase from a guy that he models his business structure from. It was the architect who designed the Guggenheim Museum he did other projects. But I guess as an architect, there's a lot of really difficult considerations when building a building, like zoning constraints and money constraints and government constraints and all sorts of things that happen. And so how do you design a group of people where you can maintain the vision of the architect of the building with a very unique design and still hit the deadlines with all of those other constraints? And then instead of building a building, you build a product so that product still maintains the vision of the core architect. And business up until that point really never took that approach. And that was like the IBM problem, where they could never think differently, because once you filter it down through all the different people, you lose whatever vision any one particular person may have ever had.
Yeah. And Jobs definitely in the early days was kind of taking a personal war against IBM. Remember that?
Oh yeah, that's right.
He definitely wanted IBM dead. He hated IBM. He hated the culture. culture. He hated the fact that everybody dressed the same and acted the same. And I know that he definitely treated his business and the way he did business, and I guess the way he lived life, like a painting. Like everything was art. Everything was a piece of something. And he always worked really hard to put the pieces together. And he always did a really good job at that. Another thing that Jobs really contributed that I think some people aren't really that in tune to is the whole Pixar thing.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
Well, he bought it from George Lucas, but
Right.
it was under his stewardship that it broke through and did Toy Story and everything like that.
1995, they can't. He was behind Toy Story, which was the first complete CG animated film. And I mean, I'll tell you, you watch that movie even now, and it looks really good.
There's no doubt that we lost. I mean, it's sad. It's really sad. I don't like Apple, but I even got teared up a little bit because it's very sad. He had his hands in a lot of pies and influenced everything. So I went out last night. I bought 240s. I drank one. I poured one out.
Oh, did you really?
Nice.
No, I didn't do that.
Oh,
But I wanted to, but my wife wouldn't let me.
You poured out an iBeer.
Yeah, I think yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get like the beer pouring app on the App Store?
Yeah, that's what I mean,
right?
Now I got to go do that with my iPad.
It seems like he hung in there a lot longer than a lot of people do with the same case that he had. So, I mean, it's great that he was around as long as he was.
Yeah.
Well, he had pancreatic cancer, and in it, I've watched that Stanford speech that he gave, since this all went down. And he said in that speech that when he got it, the doctor told him, go home, get your affairs in order. You got like 3-6 months to live, tops. Yeah. Get it all out of the way. There's not much of a chance to live. And then they did like a biopsy on it, and they checked the cells, and it turned out he had a form of pancreatic cancer that was somewhat curable. But like with anything like that, I guess
it comes back.
I don't know if it came back. I don't think there's been a lot of word about what he actually died from. I know a lot of people that do suffer from pancreatic cancer, even if they do get the cancer, there's a lot of other things that happen because of it. Like the kidneys
complications and stuff, right?
He had to get the liver removed. He had to get a liver transplant a few years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
Because his liver failed. So it's not just the pancreatic cancer that could kill you with pancreatic cancer. It's also all the other organs that rely on the pancreas or rely on other systems that the pancreas influences that could fail, and then you die from that. So.
But all considering everything he's gone through, anytime he's given a presentation on the stage, I mean, he looks thin, but he looks perfectly in control of himself,
I definitely believe that history will look back, and I wrote a blog about this earlier today, but I think that history is going to... I think that he will end up being that Nikola Tesla figure where some people will discredit him, but as generations pass, people will look more and more fondly on the contributions that Jobs brought to the table. Because I know that Bill Gates and a few of those other entrepreneurs got a lot of credit around that era, around the era of the 90s and the 2000s for things that were pioneered by Apple and either stolen or ripped off by other organizations. So, you start thinking about Windows and the success of Windows. Well, I mean, Windows was really a ripoff of the earlier versions of the Macintosh operating system. That contribution, and now that we have the tablets, the gestures, the new momentum,
even the Android OS, would that have ever birthed without iOS?
Right.
Yes, it would. Android existed actually before iOS. It just wasn't Google's. They bought Android. Once iOS became public and popular, Google bought up Android from, I forget the guy's name, but another guy made Android long before iOS.
Or I should say, would it be in the same form as it is now, I should say?
No, it would not. And actually Google buying it is a testament to that, because nobody gave the guy the time of day with that Android platform because nobody saw the value to it. Everybody thought BlackBerry OS or Windows Mobile was the future of mobile computing. And just like with the IBM thing or the Hewlett Packard thing when they came out with the Apple II. Yeah. All the big corporations didn't see the future. They only saw the constraints of what existed. And then here comes Steve Jobs with, screw that doesn't make any sense. Let's do it this way, and boom, we have new markets. We have a whole renaissance of mobile computing on our hands. Like I said at the beginning, I can't really think of anything else in my life, any other figure that has died that to me has been as important as him. I was trying to think about it. I mean, John Lennon, I think, is the last person.
Kurt Cobain, maybe. Michael Jackson, maybe.
Maybe.
I think I'm interested to see what happens to Apple over the next couple of years. I think they might. I think they've got a lot of momentum because of him. And I think a lot of people have started to adopt his way of thinking and trying to see what kind of vision he was projecting out. Maybe. I think his vision will carry on with a lot of other people.
Speaking of carrying on.
Okay, so let me totally break the topic.
Yeah.
I know you can't see us right now, but raise your hand if you think the Android logo should change.
From the you mean like the little green
I think
robot?
the little green robot is the crappiest logo I've ever seen. I'm sorry. They could have so much better, especially for an Android. They could have a way better logo. Why are they stuck on that? They revamped the Chrome logo.
So, Brian, kind of switching topics here to some WiBit.net news. We have, of course, a lot of you guys know that we've submitted the Introduction to Computer Programming iOS app. We also now, Brian, have what on deck?
We've submitted an update for the Introduction app to make it even more awesomer. And with that, we've also submitted programming in C, and hopefully that will come, hopefully it'll get approved within the next week. And today, in Introduction to Object-Oriented Programming as an iOS app has also been submitted. So they're cruising right along.
So we have two more on the way, and the remaining C++, Objective-C, and Java are going to be shortcoming, right? They'll be on the way very soon.
Absolutely.
Very nice. And I got a chance today to play with the C app, and I had a lot of fun with it. I was kind of listening to it today while I was working.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I think they're really great with the Introduction to Computer Programming, of course, is perfectly nice. But having the labs on the iPad is kind of nice.
I know I personally am going to watch all the videos through the mobile apps. I'm not going to watch them on the site.
Nice.
Just please make sure that you wear pants when you do it, because that is us talking.
Never!
Actually,
in fact, I'm going to call you while I'm watching the videos with no pants on.
Have you ever
Talk to you about
do you know
things.
people that call you when they're taking craps or peeing?
Yeah, Kevin.
While they're talking, yeah,
I know
that's
somebody
right.
that does
Kevin
that.
always does that, doesn't he?
I do
He's
text.
like, oh yeah, and then the other day when I was at work, like, what was that?
Is that a toilet flushing, Kevin? What are you doing?
Actually, every time that you ever see me post on the website or whatever, that's usually when I'm in the bathroom, because that's when I have time to do that kind of stuff. So every time that you see, Wibbiters, that I've replied to your post, think about it for a second. Think about it.
I have this weird kind of analytics tool that lets me see into the future, and our traffic just dipped on the site when people listen to that. Like 300%. This is horrible.
See what happens to our podcast when Gary's on vacation?
I know. We don't have anyone to keep us under control. So, Jason, let's go into Jason's corner. What's going on with the site?
Well, we are working diligently on incorporating search into the site. I think now that the forums are expanding a lot more, we need better search capabilities. We need a search capability.
Yeah.
Right now we're kind of stuck with Aperture, which is cool, but it's not really search. So that's kind of the trend, I think, of search anyway. So everybody, if you haven't tried it already, highlight any word you want on WiBit, and it brings up a little search box to help you find more information about that word or topic without going to a new page or anything. So we're expanding on search to give some good search functionality. We've expanded social a little bit so that now when you post a forum thread, you can share that thread immediately to Facebook or your Facebook page or your Twitter page if you want. We're not going to use the Open Graph on here, I don't think. We've kind of talked about it before, and I personally think the Open Graph is a bit of a violation of people's privacy, and since it's up to the developers to use it, I think we're making a conscious effort here at WiBit to say no, that's going too far. We're giving you, the user, all the power of what you want to post and what you want to keep to yourself. We're also working on kind of revamping the user account pages so that you can collapse the courses so that it doesn't take up the whole page like they do now, and maybe give you a little bit more detailed information about the videos that you've watched so you can get back to what you haven't watched a little bit quicker. Besides that, I think there's been some minor CSS changes and things like that, but nothing worth really noting. A lot of our longtime users will know that we had some sporadic downtime in the past, and since we migrated to the larger server, we haven't had even a moment of downtime in 2 weeks. So
the WiBit.net expansion has been very encouraging for us. We'd like to welcome a lot of our new friends in Russia and China who are, for whatever reason, becoming big WiBit fans over there. And I really don't know how to say anything in those languages, but if I did, I would say it right now.
I know how to say it.
What do you say?
I'm proud to be an American, or at least I know I'm free.
And WiBit has actually, and I think we've already done this a while back, but we have hit every continent. So WiBit is officially a global enterprise, a global virus. So thank you, world, for tuning in to WiBit.net. That's awesome.
We can move on, I think, to some we're past the sadness and we're on to
happy times.
iPhone 4S stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And speaking of a word that kind of means a couple things, or you might have the wrong translation. Siri, the new implementation of voice command on iPhone 4S. In Japanese, Siri sounds suspiciously like the word ass. And in the Georgian language, that's the country Georgia, not the state Georgia. The Georgian language, Siri means penis.
Wow.
So
Very nice. Hello, penis. I want.
Exactly. Like talk to my Siri.
Nice. What do you guys think of Siri? I don't think that Siri is that great, and I don't think that the voice features on Android's that great. Personally, there's just not enough times where I'm in a situation where I'm going to talk at my phone. I would rather have finger interaction that's just faster.
Yeah, I bet you would rather have finger interaction.
Oh.
I use the voice commands all the time on Android, and maybe it's because there hasn't been. I know you're an iPhone user. Maybe it's because there hasn't been a very good voice option for iPhone.
Maybe that's true.
And Siri looks like it's great. I would say to argue against Siri though, I would say Android's voice services do about 75% of what Siri does, and it wouldn't take very long for Google to catch up. But Siri, I think from the demo we've seen, does appear to be better than Android voice commands at the moment. But when you have voice enabled, especially if you want to say text while driving, and you don't want to touch the phone, it's very cool. It's very quick to be able to pull up and search for things, especially if you don't really know how to spell them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's a lot of little things that you use voice command for that come in handy. I think Siri was an important addition to the iOS platform. They needed to do something for voice command because as that technology gets better, and I think they have pushed the envelope to make it get better. Wait and see. You're going to get the iPhone 4S at some point, I assume, and you'll see. You'll use it. It will come in handy.
I'm going to skip to the 5 because I'm on the, with the 2-year phone contracts, I'm on the every other cycle. I was a 3G user. I missed the 3GS. I'm a 4 user. I'm going to miss the 4S. So I'll hit the next round.
I'm in the same cycle.
Well,
nice.
There's a whole joke there about cycles that I'm not going to go to. Way too lowbrow. But I think a lot of people were thinking that might be why they didn't announce an iPhone 5 this time, because a lot of people are honestly on those same kind of cycles that you guys are on. And everybody's in a 2-year commitment. The carriers don't want iPhone 5 to come out if everybody still has to wait a year for it. Mm-hmm. So new rumors are coming out suggesting that they haven't launched the iPhone 5 because people at Apple knew that the tragic news was going to be coming soon of Steve Jobs. So they kind of held back a little bit because they didn't want to, have too much craziness at the same time, I guess. The best is yet to come. Maybe we'll see something. They usually do the iPad releases in April. Maybe we'll hear something in April or about the iPhone 5.
We're going to end the podcast tonight with a quote from the man, Steve Jobs.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.